So, in today's lesson, we are going to be learning about how the camera works. Okay, so a very short lesson, and it's all about how the light travels through the lens, travels through the aperture, which works just like the iris of the eye, and then travels through the shutter, which is almost like a curtain, which is in front of the sensor, and then the light will then hit the sensor, and then you will have your image on the back of the camera, and then that will just appear like so. Like so. So these tutorials is all about keeping everything simple, breaking everything into little bite sizes so we don't feel too overwhelmed by the camera, and that we gradually build on our learning, and each lesson will be taking a different section of the camera and just learning that in some sort of depth, so that you start to feel confident and then start to feel that you can manage, using the camera, and you're in control and you're confident, rather than feeling too overwhelmed and that the camera's dictating you. How does the camera work? So let's follow this tutorial. It's really simple. So step by step, I will take you through how the camera works. So photography is all about capturing light through the camera, and the light here enters the lens. And here we see this diagram of an internal view of a digital SLR camera. So the light travels here through the lens, and the first point it meets is this. This is called the aperture, and the aperture is like the iris of the eye, and that controls how much light enters the camera, whether it's a small hole or a large hole. Then the light travels through here. Now this point here is a mirror set at 45-degree angles. So this means that when the light travels through here, it's then projected on the mirror and then travels up into the prism. This is how we can see the image through the viewfinder. However, once you press the shutter release button up here, when you press that, the mirror flicks up and the light then travels through the shutter. Now the shutter is a bit like a curtain that sits in front of the sensor of the camera, and again that's to do with you controlling how much time the shutter is open for. So you can adjust that. Here at the back here there's a dial, and then you can decide whether you want it to be a long shutter speed or a slow shutter speed. If it's slow, therefore there will be more light coming in, you will probably need to compensate and have a smaller aperture hole. And then if you have a short shutter speed, then you'll need to compensate and have a larger hole to create a balance. And then once the shutter release button is pressed, the light travels through, hits the sensor back here, and then that's how we get an image recorded. So that's how we take a photo. So here we have the aperture, the front of my camera. So the light travels through the aperture, and I'm now here going to take off the lens so that you can see exactly what's happening behind the camera lens. So you just press this button in here, and then carefully make sure that you're holding the camera and the lens. I've got mine mounted on a tripod. I press that and then I turn it anti-clockwise. So that's something you must take care when you do this. Then you can now see exactly what's happening inside the camera. So this is the shutter, and we've also got the mirror in front too there. So that's the light travels past the aperture, which is on the lens, and then it travels to the shutter. You press the shutter release button, there's mine here, and then the light will travel through the shutter. And this is the digital sensor back here, and this has got the RGB, and it will record the light as RGB pixels, and that's how you take a photograph. There you go, and then there's your image on the back of the camera. And there's our picture. So that's how a camera works.